join the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance Open Day. We hope this session will be informative. It really is a session about you. So, the questions that you are coming with, your plans and the decisions that you are currently making around your studies, we are here to support you in that decision making and to ensure that the gaps that you might have in terms of information is addressed. My name is Musa Nxele. I'm part of the faculty of the Nelson Mandela School. I am also joined by several of my colleagues as well who are in the background. So together we will be helping each other to ensure that this is a successful open day and that it is as informative and as useful as possible. We do have very limited time, but I will run across the structure very briefly. So what we'll be doing today is we'll spend a few minutes playing a video of the Nelson Mandela School that will essentially orient us into what the school is about, who is in the school, what the vision of the school is. I will follow that up with a brief PowerPoint presentation that will go into some of the detail around the curriculum that we offer in our master's program, as well as our executive education, and also a brief introduction of the faculty in the school. We will then have some time of interaction, question and answers, so that we are essentially on the same page around what questions that you might have that might not have been covered in the presentation. So I think without much further ado, having said hello to everybody from wherever you are streaming from, and very much welcome, let's get to the video so that we can get to the question and answer session as soon as possible. If in the meantime you're having any technical problems, perhaps you can't hear me or anything like that, please just type it into the chat. And once we get into the question and answer session, we'll also be using the chat as well. So feel free to use the chat and start putting in some questions as the session goes, so that by the time we get to that point, we already have some questions coming in. My colleague Petunia, who's in the background, will help us by playing the introductory video of the school.
When the Nelson Mandela Foundation officially attached its name to the school in 2018, it was because they were satisfied that the school would do a sterling job building the kind of ethical and strategic leadership that my husband, Madiba, embodies.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people.
At the University of Cape Town's Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance, we are working to uphold and build on legacies left to us by Nelson Mandela and other great African leaders who fought for the values of non-racialism, non-sexism, social justice, and human dignity.
At a time when there are such great challenges facing the world, unemployment, of poverty, of inequality, it is critical to rise to the challenge of recalling our history, challenging our leaders, and finding ways of building greater resilience of democratic institutions.
So when you want to transform a reality, structurally change the reality, you need transformative leadership.
And so it's my great pleasure to announce the launch of the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance.
The Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance is a global center of governance and leadership, attracting leaders and students from across the African continent who want to drive transformation to change lives. We're equally informed by the African Union's Agenda 2063, which commits to building an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, driven by its own citizens, representing a dynamic force in the international arena.
The school is Pan-Africanist. We believe that it's important to remember the legacy of movements and leaders that helped to establish our nations.
Pan-Africanism today is about economic transformation. And that economic transformation requires that we see beyond our borders, that we see the continental capabilities to negotiate as one.
Our continent has now to transform under a complex international environment. The school's strategic contribution is bringing together policymakers to have policy dialogue, advising governments on issues that are central to policies, developing excellence in research.
5 thematic pillars, ranging from democratic governance and developmental regionalism to climate change and social inclusion, govern everything we do. We thread these thematic concerns through 4 key components of the school: the Research Center, our Dialogue and Partnership Platform, and executive short courses and master's programs. Our short courses and academic programs balance theory and practice to prepare participants to lead ethically in the public sector, with a holistic view of the developmental challenges they will face.
What happens in government, what happens in the public administration is critically important for the lives, the welfare, the progress of people in our country. People need to kind of understand the kind of values that they ought to bring in to public service.
Julius Nyerere says only developed people can develop a nation. So it's upon me to develop myself so that I can develop my community.
By coming to do this course, I will have broadened my understanding about some of the development policies that we need to do better in South Sudan.
I want to be able to have robust engagement with the government, my government. And I feel like I need more evidence, I need new knowledge, and I need empirical data.
We want to get students to think in a multidisciplinary way so that they're able to work with teams of people, they're able to think laterally, and they're able to find solutions to complex problems.
We target broad African participation, aiming at 50% representation from beyond our borders, with a strategic focus on women and young leaders.
What are the structures in the paradigm that need to be changed?
We bring globally recognized faculty members to the classroom with a rich combination of research and practical experience.
You will be taught by some of the finest minds on the African continent, and I think the network that you will create is invaluable.
Whether partnering with the United Nations to share research and educational materials, advising on the newly formed African Continental Free Trade Area Pact, or hosting roundtable discussions on vaccine manufacturing in Africa, we are working tirelessly to address real-world problems.
We have a responsibility to take the torch of previous generations and pass it on. And the school is a torchbearer.
We are hoping, but also working to ensure that the school becomes a place where this next generation of leaders will emerge from.
We need to commit all the resources we can to rebuilding the integrity and capacity of government with the brightest of the rising generation of public servants.
Don't just live a small life, live a life bigger than you.
Thank you very much, Petunia, and welcome to others who joined during the video. So we were just playing a video that's meant to give us an overarching view of what the school is about, and we hope that it has been informative. So what I'll do now to complement and build on the video is to share a PowerPoint presentation of the school, and that will lead us to hopefully a fruitful discussion around some of the questions. Okay, so I'm trusting that you can see the PowerPoint, and I'll proceed with that assumption. So having seen the brief introduction from the video, I just want to talk very briefly about you. So as you have seen, the school really is interested in building a world-class school of public policy. But, you know, it's very little about the school, but about the people. It's first and foremost the people and the students that we want to bring into the school. So you would typically be a student who is working either in the public sector, in civil society, or even in the private sector, or maybe even completing your studies, but you are looking for an opportunity at a master's level to really tackle public governance challenges that plague our society, and you committed to the democratic governance, the building of democratic governance in society, which comes with complex challenges, precisely because we find ourselves in complex governance settings. So the school has that in mind. The school therefore aims to build itself to be one of the leading public schools in Africa that deals with the question of policy and governance. The vision of the school is also informed by the University of Cape Town's Vision 2030. And this vision is geared towards redressing inequality, ensuring that there's a return of dignity, and we really care about social justice. And part of that, of course, has to do with bringing back the agency of citizens. And so that's what Vision 2030 is about at UCT. Our vision as part of a Pan-Africanist school as well is informed by African Union's Agenda 2063. As we all know, the Agenda 2063 is as well interested in developing the resilience and the capability of democratic governance in our African societies. We are yet to see the capabilities as well as the fruits of the democratic governance dividend. So we are very much invested in that. And also we cover developmental regionalism in the school more broadly as part of building resilience in terms of not only democratic governance, but also in terms of economic development and integration in the continent. And of course, that links with the pertinent issue of sustainable development linked with climate change challenges, as well as more broadly social inclusion. So essentially, we are invested in building the capabilities of our African continent, and we are a Pan-Africanist school, and we really do believe that we have a role to play in this advancement of our African continent, not only because we have a common heritage and a common history, but because we also have a common destiny. So to move on, the school itself was established 10 years ago at the University of Cape Town. The school has done incredibly well over this 10 years. We have over the 10 years registered more than 200 students in our Masters of Development Policy and Practice, which is comparatively quite a huge success. As we speak, in the academic year of 2023, we have about 62 master's students enrolled in our program and 10 PhD candidates. And the school continues to grow in that sense. And what the school brings together is not only content that is cutting edge and that is looking continental wise, but we also bring both a faculty that has not only the expertise, but the interest in building the continent, as well as students who are equally capable, equally interested in building the continent. And I think that is really the value proposition of the school, is the kind of students that we are bringing into our network, into our classroom, because you are the expert wherever you are sitting. You are the one who understands the heart of the problems, and therefore we get to come together and tackle those problems and use the tools that can be helpful towards us. And the school as well is embedded in an African-wide and in a global-wide network as well, which is part of the value proposition that ultimately enhances the kind of offering that we do in the classroom, in research, in executive education, as well as in the alumni network that we offer as a school. All right. The faculty of the school is quite diverse. We are led by our director, Professor Faisal Ismail, who is himself known as a Pan-Africanist and has vast experience in building networks and capabilities in the continent. We have faculty as well, such as Dr. Marianne Camera, who is our leadership, anti-corruption and ethics specialist. We have Professor Carlos Lopez, who is a pioneering academic Pan-Africanist researcher, speaker, and writer as well, very influential throughout the continent, but abroad as well. We have Dr. Shanil Haricharan as well, who is our specialist in public leadership issues. We have Dr. Deirdre Rule, who is our expert in research methodologies, as well as Professor Rajan Govender, who's also our research expert and also leads our PhD executive committee. We have Ms. Penny Parenzi, who leads our implementation offering at the school, a very important pillar of what we offer and do. We have Professor Brian Raftopoulos, who leads our governance and development research pillar in the school and is also teaching faculty at the school. We have Dr. Noncedo Vudula, who is our lead researcher at the school, the chair of research, and also leads on the AFCFTA research that the school does. We have Dr. Mandela, who leads the school in terms of our climate change research and teaches as well on climate change in the school, and also specializes on questions of China-Africa relations. And of course, Mr. Mark Haywood, who is a civil society activist, leads in our research on governance and development in the school. We also have several guest lecturers in the school, as well as adjunct faculty who teach and specialize across a variety of disciplines, of problems that we may be interested in. So in terms of an offering of faculty from a supply side perspective, the school is very rich in who it is able to bring into the curriculum. So our flagship offering is the Masters in Development of Development Policy and Practice, which, as I've mentioned, we've been offering for the past 10 years and has been doing incredibly well. As the name suggests, we focus on development policy issues or on governance issues. But what sets the school apart, not only, I think, in the African context, but globally, is our emphasis on practice. As I said, we have in mind participants who are embedded in some way in real problems of governance, and you are grappling with these problems. And what you're looking for is not a degree that is going to focus on more theory, but you're looking for a degree that is going to bridge that theoretical understanding and theoretical frameworks with real problems, with real practice. And that's what we focus on at the school. So as a program, we have that kind of pedagogy, and part of the practice framework that we emphasize at the school. Let me just admit participant. What we emphasize at the school as part of practice is walking the journey with you. So we are always aiming to improve our program in such a way that we can walk the journey with you in thinking about the problems that you are tackling. And we try and design our program to be responsive to the kinds of problems you're thinking about, so that instead of giving you work and assignments that are outside of your immediate thought, we try to tailor the curriculum to be adaptive, to be responsive, to be changing over time, so that we bring with you, or we bring you with in the journey of thinking about the kinds of problems you have, but also the kinds of tools that we would like you to have as part of the master's program. So I think I'll take more questions on that if you have questions, but it is quite an adaptive program. And then the master's is offered in 2 streams. We have the 1-year stream as well as the 2-year stream. In terms of the 1-year stream, we offer it over 12 months. And it consists of 4 quarters, and each quarter consists of 6 weeks. It is quite an intensive program. The classes happen in the evenings to accommodate students who might otherwise be engaged at work or in various other commitments. But it is important to note that this is a full-time program. So although students or participants are attending in the evenings, the expectation is that you would have taken the decision to say that you're going to devote a full-time to the studies. So that becomes very important in order to complete successfully within that 12 months. We try, of course, as the school to walk the journey with you so that there's always a presence. The program is offered in hybrid format. It is predominantly in the online format, given that typically our participants are based across the continent. However, we do try as much as possible to accommodate participants who might be able to come to Cape Town. But it is important, once again, that we as a school will ensure that there is a presence wherever you are, so that you do feel supported and you do feel somewhat that you are based on campus, even though it might be a virtual campus. Then there is a 2-year stream of the program, and this is the format that we have been offering since the inception of the school. The 2-year format is a block release format consisting of 4 intensive 2-week semesters. And this happens in person. So participants would typically come between January and February for the first semester, June and July for the second semester, and they will come back again the following year for those 2 weeks of contact per semester. Admission is, of course, quite highly selective, and we do look at your track record and your demonstrated potential as well. But of course, you also must meet some baseline academic criteria into a master's program. I'll be very brief with this so that I accommodate as much as possible question and answer. So the program currently consists of 6 key courses together with research. So the student, if you think about what you're seeing on the screen as a journey, you will take a course on strategic policy making for development, which will plunge you into some of the varieties of governance contexts in the continent and the kinds of problems that you would confront in those complex contexts, from the national level all the way to the organizational level. And at that point, there's a course on policy implementation, which then picks up from the strategic policy making to start thinking about some of the project level, agent level problems of navigating the complexities towards implementation. Part of doing that is being able to be an effective leader. So understanding the public governance context within which you work, which is the leadership and governance course, that's where it comes in, where you're facing even ethical dilemmas that you need to think about how do you navigate that towards success. So that's the leadership and governance course. But you also need to be an expert in thinking about the kinds of discourses of development in development policy as part of crafting policies that are effective and that make sense. And that's where the discourses in development policy in Africa comes in, covering very topical issues that have to do with, for instance, African-wide industrialization and integration. And then, of course, there are global leadership priorities that we're currently facing. And these are dynamic, these are changing, and some of them are going to be with us for the longest time. Think about climate change, think about renewable energy, think about questions of conflict, for instance. So the global leadership priorities course looks at these varieties of problems and is responsive to the problems as they emerge. Hence, it's called leadership priorities. And then we have the topics in African economic development, which is another course that focuses on questions of integration and economic development. And this is complemented with very important research. So a research design and methods course, which tries to give you the tools to enhance your skills as a researcher in order to effectively research your problems, but also a paper component where you get to explore in more depth the problem that you care about, which will culminate into a mini thesis. Okay, so I think I'm briefly going to speak about the executive education, to say that complementing our Masters in Development Policy and Practice is our executive education, which is a suite of short courses that try to focus on different areas of problems that the school cares about and that our clients care about. So this is in two ways. So we already have a suite of courses that cover different aspects such as democratic governance, economic development in the continent, questions of implementation. And these are often taken by, once again, working professionals who are interested in taking these particular areas of problems and skilling themselves, and also introducing themselves into a network of people thinking about these problems. But on the other side, we are also demand driven. So often large clients come to us and say, well, we would like to work with you in creating a suite of courses that can respond to particular areas of need. So that's essentially our executive education program. This one is not credit bearing, so you do not necessarily require, for instance, a degree or a formal qualification, because the admission criteria is a bit different from that perspective, although we do still try to look at your experience and to look at what you can offer and why you want to take the executive education. So I think that's about enough information for now, and apologies that I've been very quick. I'm going to invite our student, Ms. Akhisanang, who is the manager, the innovation manager at the DG Murray Trust, to just share her testimony of what it has been like so far as a student. She will take 2 minutes, and then we'll open up to answers, to question and answers. Akhisanang, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Musa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akhisanang Mahoa, and I am currently doing the 2-year part-time program, MDPP program. And my experience at the school has been nothing short of amazing. And I promise you that I have not been paid to say this. I truly mean it. It has changed my life and reignited the passion that I've always had in being part of solutions that drive African development and being part of discourse that is around regional integration. The course has pushed me in many ways. It has pushed me to question everything I know, to ask questions all the time. I know it sounds simple, but we take the influences and paradigms, our own paradigms, and how we implement things so lightly, and it's quite informed. Our paradigms are informed by these beliefs that push how we implement things. So we unpack those kinds of things in the class, And it brings me to the next point of understanding historical context. The class and the school and the lecturers are very big on understanding historical context, as they fundamentally have a huge role in how we do things, the types of leadership styles, how might we integrate or interrogate the implementation based on these things, and not think in silos and see these different elements as we think through policy implementation and policies. The school has also quite pushed me to not only identify the gap between policy formulation and policy implementation. It's good and well that you identify it. It also wants you to ask yourself, then what? In your space, what are you going to do about this gap, to think innovatively and creatively and relevantly as to what do you do with this gap that you've identified, this problem that you have. What I do love as well is that the school does this in a multidisciplinary fashion. It goes past thinking that economics alone is important, politics alone is important. All these things are important, but they are intertwined, and how the lectures are delivered, you can feel that you start always from a philosophical, historical context and understanding what are the founding ideologies of what we're trying to understand, and then we move forward in unpacking the problems. I chose the MDPP because I wanted something applied. I didn't want to be drowning in a pool of theories and readings where afterwards I am stuck with all this knowledge but not know how to apply it. So you'll find that all the tools that we are given and taught, you will constantly be using them and speaking about them in conversation in class. You'll be applying them in assignments, and the tools will inevitably be used in your workplace because you're always thinking about them as you traverse your workspaces and your assignments simultaneously. But just to close, key takeaways. If you're going to do part-time, don't be fooled by seeing the word part-time. I was fooled by that, thinking that there are spaces in between to have a breather. That's not the case. You're always thinking about the assignments and the readings, because the way it's done is that it feels like mini research projects and you're always engaging the material. So just be prepared to manage your life and time accordingly. But another point is that you should remember your why, because the program can get a bit grueling, demanding, at times, and I'm an advocate for the program, but I can also say that it's quite challenging and demanding, but it is rewarding when you remember your why during these tough times. Thirdly, second last, is that the school has lecturers that are very, very passionate about the work that they do. They bring the theory and the experiences from all these multinational organizations in the class. You don't need to travel to all these universities around the world. It feels as if the world comes to you in the class. They understand African problems, and they are driven and strive to guide you through solutions that are applicable to the African context. And then lastly is that the classroom atmosphere is so encouraging and so different, because all these countries are in one space. People from all these countries are from the continent, different sectors, which brings a different dimension to how we learn and engage. I hope that was helpful. Thank you, Musa.
Very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Khisanang, and thank you for both an optimistic but also pragmatic feedback on the reality of being a student at the school. And I think it's very important what Khisanang has said, that know your why even when you're applying, because the timing of your application, knowing that you've devoted time and energy into your decision, is very important. So I'm going to use this time to take questions. So what I'm going to do is to first start with the questions that are typed in. Feel free to just keep on adding your questions, and then hopefully, even though we are tight for time, I'm going to take maybe one or two questions via, if anybody wants to use their audio to speak into it. I'm hoping, Petunia, that we can take no more than 10 minutes, given that we started a bit late, so ending at 20 past 2 South African time. So firstly, Adam is asking, Adam, you have a Master of Civic Education degree. Do we offer a PhD program in the school? I think the first thing, Adam, I'm going to say is typically our participants who are coming for the master's program at the school already have master's degrees. And so they are looking for a program like ours that focuses on practice and really just takes them a step forward to their masters. So that's the one option, to say that the masters remains an option. But secondly, the school currently has some students registered for the PhD. We do not proactively have a call for PhD applications. However, we do not deny any participant from applying for a PhD at the school. However, it's important to know that admission to a PhD depends on the capacity in the school as well as the topic. And this is normal practice across academic departments in any university. So so you can apply, but know that those constraints will be taken into account in reviewing your application. And then Kenneth is saying, for instance, from which month to which month would constitute a term for the 2-year program? Okay, so for the 2-year program, you can think of it as a program that is divided into 4 semesters. So if you are first year, you will come in February for 2 weeks. You will come in July for another 2 weeks. The following year, you will come normally towards the end of January for 2 weeks, and sometime in June for another week. So that's how it's structured. So from the first year that you arrive, you come for 2 weeks, but think of it as an entire semester. In an academic calendar at UCT, and a semester starts from February all the way to June of a year, and then the second semester starts from July all the way to December. So although you will come for a 2-week intense engagement on campus, you will have the rest of the semester working on the assignments and the projects that you'll be given for the set of courses that you would have registered for that particular semester. That will be the same in the following semester of the first year. It will be the same once again in the third semester of the second year. And then the fourth semester of the second year is devoted to mainly devoted to your research thesis. So that's the structure of the 2-year program. Let me just see. Also, for a student looking to pursue the program and interact with a broader class membership, okay, which one would you recommend? All right, so the 1-year and the 2-year program have a slightly different ethos. The 2-year program's ethos is really focused on mid to senior public professionals, public sector professionals, civic society professionals. So those would typically have experience of around a decade or so, whereas the 1-year program is really geared towards emerging leaders who might not necessarily have so much experience. So it's 2 years experience, 4 years experience, and you still are essentially working around building your career in the public sector or in the civic space, or even at other times in the private sector. So that's really the main ethos, although we are flexible to some extent around who goes into the 1-year and who goes into the 2-year program. But I'm sure it makes sense even for you to say that it does matter that you build cohorts that are in a similar life phase and in a similar networking phase, because that really does also impact on the classroom dynamic with the kinds of discussions and questions that you have. So that's generally the case. Given what I've just said, Kenneth, then you can decide in which stream you are likely to best fit into. And I think that consideration should be prioritized over whether you are doing a degree over 1 year or 2 years. I think that there sometimes perhaps might be some favor towards a 1-year program without actually thinking through critically about where you would best fit in. Right. And then Michael is saying, I'm currently doing a PhD in public management and governance. Am I eligible to apply for the MDPP? So Michael, yes, if you, I don't know where you are with the registration of your PhD. So we would not look favorably if you are currently registered for a PhD, and there are some restrictions, at least in South Africa, around concurrent registrations. They would require special contracts to allow concurrent registration. So we would expect you to, at the very least, have taken a leave of absence from one institution, I believe, in order to take ours. But effectively, it would mean that you're not concurrently registered elsewhere in order to take your a degree with us. And this would apply across the institution. Okay, how is the calendar term for the 1-year program like? Okay, thank you, Zikona, for replying to that. Okay, so we still have 5 more minutes. Do we still have other questions? Please feel free to raise your hand and I can recognize you if you want to speak via audio. If you're uncomfortable with that, please feel free to just drop in the chat. If you've asked me a question and I wasn't clear in my reply, please feel free to push back a little bit and ask a bit more about what I would have said. Okay, so the fee for the 2-year program, I believe that we have it published on our website and in the fee book. However, and I'm holding back a little bit on answering that, we will have that information latest next month. So we have the 2023 fee structure, but we are currently trying to make some alterations to the fee structure for 2024 in a favorable direction. So allow me to, I would advise that for now, could you please look at either the UCT fee handbook for 2023 to see what the fee structure is, but I'm in no position at the moment to confirm the fee structure for 2024. And I'm sorry that that's an unsatisfactory answer, but it's better because it's cautious, but it's also realistic in terms of what we're trying to work on at the moment. I'm loving the questions, so please keep on asking the questions. And maybe I should say that because even the answering is evolving, such as the question of the fees, so maybe you can join another open day maybe next month to see if we would have more concrete answers to some of the matters. Do you have any kind, so Sa is saying, do you have any kind of scholarship for the 1-year program? So scholarship is also an important consideration. Up to date, we have been able to provide some form of scholarship in the school. So what would normally happen is that we'd look at our budget. So this is depending on the sponsorship of the school, in which we then try to give sponsorship to students. But this is always a revolving kind of conversation. So we are currently having that conversation in the school to see if we are in a position to offer scholarship and to what extent we would be in that position. So this, I would have to also hold off to say that perhaps in a month's time, we'll be able to give a more concrete reply to the question of scholarships, but we are working on it. All right. So also just to re-emphasize our colleagues to say, you know, whether you have a master's program, this is a master's program that is also worth looking at. For instance, I have 2 master's degrees. We have other faculty who have 2 master's degrees, so it is possible, because the decision metrics is around the complementarity of what you are looking for. So that's the one thing. The second thing is, please go through our website to look at all the information that you might need, as well as the admission requirements as well. In terms of contacts, I should have reshared the screen. Thank you, Petunia, for sharing that screen. Please do contact our colleague, Ms. Zikhona Sikota, who's always willing and able to answer questions that have to do with the application process. You can also email me at musa.nxele@uct.ac.za if you have questions following up from this meeting as well. I'll be very happy to also reply and assist Zikhona in answering some of these questions. But it is 2:20 South African time. So I am going to thank you very much for attending, hoping that this was informative and useful. Please consider joining our open day next month. Again, we have a series of open days, but perhaps in a month's time, you might want to join and see, especially if you might have follow-up questions as well. Thank you very much, and looking forward to meeting you next year in our class. Thank you, everybody.